You see, the greater the expectation, the greater the hurt when it doesn't work out. And I poured so much into that. I gave up everything at this point in time that I think it was possible, yes, but I thought it was going to take me a lot longer than what it actually took me. It's tough. You can accomplish anything that you want to, but you got to believe it. Because if you don't believe it, you don't believe in you, why should I believe in you?
Good morning, America. Welcome to the Black Money Podcast. Tune in daily. Learn how to make your money grow. I heard money don't grow on trees, but I still believe.
Club Shay Shay podcast, none other than Mr. Shannon Sharpe. All right, thank you so much, Shannon, for joining us on the Black Money Tree podcast, the NAACP Image Award-winning Black Money Tree podcast.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you having me.
So we're going to go ahead and get into it. Now, you and I have some eerie similarities. We grew up a lot alike.
Okay.
You were rural Georgia. I was rural Louisiana. Okay? You like them 300 buns and a soda? I would get 100 bun and an orange sun kid. Okay. You the youngest of three, I'm the youngest of four.
Oh, got you.
Okay.
Yeah.
You pick tobacco, I pick cotton. So there are a lot of similarities in terms of the way we were raised, and I know that old school, I'm not gonna repeat myself type mindset. So the question is, what parts of Shannon then has created the Shannon that we see before us today, that old school thinking? What parts of you then has created the Shannon we see today?
Everything. My upbringing, seeing my grandmother struggle, seeing the love that she had for my brother, my sister, and myself. My grandmother raised her 9. Took my mom's 3 and raised them as if they were her own. She loved her 3 grands more than she loved her own kids. And the only thing my brother and I talked about when we were growing up, how do we get her out of this environment? How do we get Granny into a house that has indoor plumbing, that has central heating, cooling, and when it rains, she doesn't get rained on. That was my thought process. I wake up every morning saying I never want to eat cold oatmeal. I never want to eat the animals that I had to eat. And I never want to go back to that situation. Now, occasionally, I go to the store and I'll buy a can of, people go buy you a sausage. Or I'll get bologna. That's a choice.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. But I know where I came from, and what I don't want to repeat again.
Yeah.
So everything that you see, the discipline, the structure that my grandparents instilled in us, and I was having a conversation with the young kids in the back, and I told them, discipline requires you to do your very best when no one else is watching. See, I know you'll do the right thing when someone's looking at you, but will you do the right thing when no one is watching? And so I get up every day trying to be the best person, trying to be the best boss, trying to be the best employee I possibly can.
Yeah. All right, thank you so much. That's a great answer. Now, let's reverse it. Small town, a lot of people, small-minded type of thinking.
Yeah.
They, I know in Lake Providence, Louisiana, that's where I grew up. You had the guys just sitting on the corner with the wine bottle. They would work hard,
Yes.
but all they did was live for the weekend, you
Correct.
know? So many times if you try to advance and do more, not coming to all the cookouts and this, that, and the other, everybody saying, oh, you think you better than us,
Right.
you know? So how have you learned to, I guess, embrace your upbringing, but not being trapped by some of the pitfalls of it?
The biggest thing is that you can only grow to the dimensions of your environment. And sometimes you have to realize you have to leave that environment if you truly want to grow. I was very fortunate because people saw me, and although they realized they weren't going to leave, I was their escape. They were going to live vicariously through me and my brother, being able to leave that small rural town, 3,500 people, 2 stoplights. And so they did a great job of protecting me. Even as I became successful, I was in the league and I would come back and I had friends and homeboys that were doing certain things. They shielded me. They were getting ready to go do certain things. Hey, we don't want any part. We don't want you around. Offer them a ride back to the city. They say, nah, because if something happens, you're going to be the headline. And we don't want to bring any shame to you.
Really?
And so they looked after me. Now, was everybody happy? No, but more people were happy than not. And a lot of times what happens is someone can give you 1,000 compliments, but it's that one negative one that you focus on. I don't know why we're wired like that, but we just are. I can sign 10,000 autographs, but if I don't sign 10,001, I'm a jerk.
Yeah.
That's just the way we're wired. And so growing up in that town, I knew I wanted to leave. Although I was there for 18 years physically, I was never there mentally. I saw myself a million different places. I saw myself in the situation that I'm currently in, and that's all I thought about. The only thing that I ever wanted, the only thing, my grandfather told my brother and I, he says, boys, me and my brother, he says, I don't care what you become in life. You just never have to look me in your granny in the eye and say, I'm sorry. From that moment on, that's the only thing that I thought about. How can I make my grandmother proud? Every morning I wake up, my grandmother's been gone almost 13 years. Every morning I wake up, I thank the Lord for allowing me to see another day. With the blood running warm in my veins, I have use for my limbs, I'm in my right mind. And the next thing, Granny, are you proud of your baby? Are you proud of what I did yesterday? And at the end of the day, I come home and before I hit the bed, I say my prayer. I say, Granny, are you proud of me again? I repeat that because the only thing that I want to be famous, that was okay. But if I could have supported my grandmother and my family without being famous, that would have been okay also. I just want to know, Granny, are you proud of your baby?
Yeah. So where do you think that drive came from? You said even before your granddad made that statement, you saw yourself doing the same things you're doing.
Yeah.
But there's so many people in that same environment that didn't see themselves. Where do you think that came from?
I always wanted to be something. I always wanted to be somebody. And, you know, I think some of you guys that have followed my career, you hear me talk about my grandparents a lot because they mean so much to me. Because I've never had any role models that didn't live in my house. Every person that I wanted to be, every person that I looked up to, I could look across the dinner table and I could see them. I think it probably had to be growing up. My brother slept in the bed with my grandfather. I slept in the bed with my grandmother until I was 15, until my brother went to college. So I slept in the bed with my grandmother until I was 15. This had to be about 1973 or 1974. And my grandfather and my grandmother was having a conversation. And my grandfather said, Mary, I might be dead and gone, but them two boys are going to make something of themselves. And I specifically remember hearing him say it. He said, that young one, that little one, Mary, he going to be special. And I always, when people believe in me, the one thing I don't want to do is let them down. I never want to let anybody down that believed in Shannon Sharpe. And so for me, growing up, I started working at the age of 5, working in the tobacco fields. We caught chickens, we cropped tobacco, we clipped onions, we watermelons and baled hay for $5 a day. And let me tell you what my discipline, my hard work came from. My cousin, believe it or not, when I was younger, they used to call me Pee-wee because I was so small. And we worked for a guy named Joe Taylor, Mr. Joe, rest his soul. And my cousin, they called him Sundown because one day the sun had started to go down and he said it was time to get off work. So they called us Pee-wee and Sundown. I let my cousin talk me into going to Mr. Joe to ask for a raise. Now we're making $5 a day and we're working from cane to cane. When you go to the field, you can't see. When you go home, you can't see. And I let him talk me in and say, well, go ask him to give us the raise. So I said, Mr. Joe, we be working hard, Mr. Joe, man. We need to make more money than this. He said, well, Pee-wee, how much you think you should make? You know, I'm making $5, so I figured He said, you got it, Pee-wee, no problem. So now we're making $6 a day. The next day, me and my cousin, we go out there. We're not working as hard as we once were. We got a raise. I'm feeling good about myself. My sister didn't say a word. We back there playing. She gets home. She tells my granny, Mr. Joe gave them boys a raise, and all they did was play in the fields. All they did was play. My grandmother didn't say a word. Just nod just like this here. Next morning, she was off. She get up, Mr. Joe, blow the horn, we go out. She said, Joe, I heard you gave them boys a raise. She said, yeah, Mary. He said, yeah, Mary, them boys been working hard. She said, take that dollar back. He said, Libby told me they didn't work. So he took the dollar back that I thought we had earned. And from that moment on, I never forgot. I said, nobody's ever going to take money because I didn't give them a full day's work. And so I show up every day and I give you a full day.
Thank you. That's it. So let's talk a little bit about business. When people think of Shannon Sharpe, they think Pro Football Hall of Famer, Super Bowl champion, the guy that was on the couch with Cat Williams now. But people don't necessarily say businessman. But you're succeeding at a high level in some very competitive industries. So let's lay it out there. Who is Shannon Sharpe, the businessman?
The mistake that people made is that when they say Shannon Sharpe, football player, that's what I did. That's not who I am. See, there's a difference between the two, and sometimes people get caught up being that. What you see, a kid from rural South Georgia grew up with humble beginnings that wanted to make good for his grandparents. I take the same approach in business that I had when I played the game, is that I'm obsessed. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Everybody doesn't like ice cream. Everybody doesn't like chicken. Everybody doesn't like shellfish. I understand that. I'm obsessed with success. That's my drug. Nothing else, not the pleasures that you would think, women and drugs and gambling or whatever, not possession. It's success. That's my drug. And I'm addicted to it. And I need people around me that are obsessed as I am. Because I go to bed and I tell people that work for me at Shay Shay Media, I say, this company got room for one lazy mofo. I'm in. I'm in. Yeah. And I'm not lazy.
Yeah.
I detest it. My kids will tell you. But Shannon, the businessman, works as hard, if not harder, than Shannon, the football player, because God blessed me with certain abilities that you don't necessarily get. And I got a late start into the business world because it was something that I never wanted to be a businessman. I wanted to be a professional athlete, make my money, take care of my money, take care of my family. And then whatever happens after that, I can live with whatever it was, because I didn't really see myself in the media. I didn't see myself owning businesses. I just saw myself being the best man, son, father I could be, best athlete I could be. And then whatever happened after that, I can live with. I'm more obsessed with this. But a lot of it is out of my control. You see, I feel that if I worked harder, I could play better. Therefore, it would equate to us winning the game. Now, in this thing called business, it's about relationships. I don't care how hard you work. You can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but if you don't have great relationships, it's not going to work. And that's what I found out, is that you have to have a relationship. People have to want to work with you. Because a lot of times, if you have a great relationship, you might not be the most qualified for that job. But man, I had a great conversation with Shannon Sharpe one time. Man, I think he would be great for this. He might not be the best, but I like working with him. And that's what you need. But the obsession that I have, you have to deny yourself a lot of things. I haven't gone on a vacation since 1996. I make no apologies for that. That's my camera guy right there. If you come on with Shay Shay Media,
Yeah.
you take a vacation when I take a vacation.
Yeah.
And if you can't deal with that, that's fine. There are probably like 30 people that got resumes in that want to work for Shay Shay Media. We're going to take a break after the NBA finals. We're going to take 2 weeks off, 3 weeks off. We'll come back for a week. We'll take another 2 weeks off, and we'll repeat the cycle all over again. But everybody's on call. Shannon Sharpe's on call 24 hours a day. The EPs are on call 24 hours a day. That's the only way to do it.
Yeah. Wow. So let's talk a little bit about Shay Shay Media and the podcast. That is, podcasts and social media in general is something that's not necessarily dominated by, people your age, even my age. But you've taken this by storm. Was that your idea? And if not, were you resistant to it?
No, I wasn't resistant to it. I kind of started a podcast during the pandemic, and I wanted to give people a release from not being able to go anywhere, not their normal lives were kind of turned upside down. And when I started the podcast, my producer, CJ, he's like, man, we need to do a podcast. You should do a podcast. I was like, man, CJ, I don't know. I said, well, how do we go about it? I was like, man, he's like, I tell you what, just do it. And I said, well, how do we get guests? He said, just call people in your phone, who you have. So I had like Ice Cube, Floyd Mayweather, Snoop Dogg, Master P. Obviously, my brother was my first client, Rick Ross. So that's what I did. Like, hey, bro, I need a favor. I'm starting a podcast. I wonder if you would be a guest. Because remember, everything was virtual at that point in time. It was like, sure, would love to. And that kind of gave me the credibility because I was starting a podcast and I had some heavy hitters on out the gate. So that kind of gave me some credibility. And so as we started growing, I thought to myself, I said, well, damn, if I just do athletes, what's going to set me apart? It's just going to be an athlete interviewing athletes. So I pivoted. I said, what if I do celebs? What if I do entertainers? What if I do rappers? What if I do influencers? And I started thinking, McDonald's didn't become McDonald's by just selling hamburgers. They sell chicken nuggets. They sell fish sandwiches. Yeah. They used to sell milkshakes, but that machine is broken all the time. So I started to see, I said, okay, if he has a following or she has a following, yeah, they come on my podcast, now that's a different set of eyes. Yeah. And I was like, that's it. So reach out and I get a Steve Harvey. I reach out and I get some of these big name, a Magic Johnson, some of these other guys. But I was telling the story the other night. Wednesday night, we had a thing in New York for YouTube, the Brandcast with the NFL. And I was on a panel with Commissioner Goodell. And I said what television did for sporting events, Cat Williams did for Club Shay Shay. Because you had to take me serious now. It's the most viewed interview in
all time
history.
Yeah.
It pushed me to the forefront. Now Club Shay Shay is the biggest podcast on YouTube of all, not just sports. If a podcast is on YouTube, Club Shay Shay is number one. Yeah. Cat did that. I'm forever grateful for what he did. And I talked to Cat when he had his special with Netflix. And he put his arm around me. He says, we did what we did. He said, but what I'm most proud about you is that you've been able to keep it going. Okay. And, but yeah, you don't know, normally guys that in this space, the content creators, they're not almost 56. Yeah. But it's a passion of mine. I love being in control. I get to choose the guests. I mean, now that since we've had Cat, we have a lot of people that's reached out and want to come on the podcast.
I bet.
But you have to be judicious about who you invite. Everything is not, and you're gonna have some good, some bad. We have some people on that, people like, well, this didn't go the way that they thought it would. But you have to be willing to accept all that comes along with it, good and the bad.
So business, making money, getting clicks. Some people are saying Shay Shay, you know, kind of the mess or whatever talk show. Where do you draw the line of like what you'll put on, what you want? Is there ever like an interview where you didn't air it or said that's too much, or do you feel any responsibility, or is it, talk a little bit about that and that thought process of what you air and when?
But here's the thing. When if two people have a conversation, and this gentleman right here at this table, he said, man, let me tell you what happened. Such a, man, Jeffrey, he did this. That's gossip, because I had heard the other guy's side of the story. You and I having a conversation. You're not forcing me to say anything. How is it messy of me? I thought when you have a conversation, I don't say interview them. When you have a conversation, I ask the person a question. If they answer the question honestly, how am I being messy? I just ask the question. I don't force anybody. I didn't force Kat. I didn't force Monique. I didn't force Kale, Gary Owens, and none of these guys to say anything. I asked before, is there anything you don't want to talk about? Sometimes they say yes. Most of the time, I'm an open book. I ask a question. I think the thing is, if you look at me where I'm different than most, when I'm asking questions, I don't look at them with judgy eyes. I have no judgment. This is a safe space. You get to say what you want to say. Then I let you guys decide. You've heard somebody else's story. A lot of times they come on and you're hearing things for the very first time. And I try not to, what I try to do is that if I'm going to have somebody on, I don't listen to any other interviews that they may have had, because I don't want it to cloud my vision of said person. So I want to ask the question in the most honest and sincere form without being judgy as I possibly can. People say that. See, people say, oh, you being messy, but the people that say that, they go on other people's podcasts and be messy. They have their own podcast and they're messy. The problem that they have, it's not that. They never said I was messy until I got 69 million views. Yeah. Can't win. I was never messy. Now, people was coming on there saying the exact same thing, and nobody said a word. It's the fact of the matter is, just because you was first at something, that doesn't mean you're the best at it. So now what has happened is that here's a guy that played in the NFL, and a lot of this has to do, I lost my job at Fox. I go from losing my job in June to being named the best sports personality on television, to Club Shay Shay moving to #1 on YouTube, to having the most viewed on YouTube, to having all this that's happening. So people try to shoot you down. Yeah. And I don't know, and it's not, it's us. And let's be candid, it's not us. Because as soon as I start having a little success that was more than what they were having, oh, he gay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was never, when I played in the NFL, nobody ever said anything about gay.
Yeah.
I've always been big. I've always been muscular. I wear fitted clothes. I work out. Why should I wear frumpy clothes to appease you?
Yeah.
I don't dress for you. I dress for me.
Yeah.
But that's what we do.
Yeah. So,
but you know what? It took me a while, because I tell people, I've kind of been someone. I was one of the best athletes in my area. So since I was about 17, people knew who Shannon Sharpe was. This is a different level of celebrity. And I remember having a conversation with Kat, and Kat said, they're gonna come. I said, Kat, bro, I mean, everybody, bro, I've been this. He said, no, Shannon. This is gonna change. I mean, a lot of you guys heard me say, this is gonna put you in a new realm. It's gonna put you in a new dimension. He said, Shannon, they're gonna come. I said, well, why? I didn't say anything. You said it. Why don't they come for you? He said, because they know you can't respond like I can. He said, that was a buzz by. They don't want these direct hits. I said, oh.
Yeah.
So if he does the direct hits, I'm going to have to let him go somewhere to deliver those. So
talk about that. You kind of touched that. How difficult is that for you? You seem, when I watched you growing up, you prided yourself on saying what you feel, you know. Yeah. But now you're a businessman. You can't say what you feel. How difficult is that?
It's difficult. what I'm learning is that you don't have to have an opinion on everything. And it's okay to like, man, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And to just let it go.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part for me. But I do understand that when you sign on and you're part of a corporation and you have advertisers, you have other responsibilities other than just self.
Yeah.
So that's the hardest thing, one of the things that I've had to learn. But I'm okay with that. I think the biggest thing for me is not having an opinion, because I've always had an opinion. That's kind of how I got the job and got the position that I'm in, is to be able to have an opinion. And but I'm learning it's okay not to have an opinion on everything. And what's been most surprising is that some of the people that you see that, oh, bro, you were good and I love, those are the ones that do the most talking.
Yeah.
I don't talk about people. I don't have time. What you do, it's like, well, who your competition? I'm in competition with me. That's my competition. I don't worry about how many views or how many clicks or how many someone else got, because all I can do is maximize what I can do. And if Shannon Sharpe gets the best out of what Shannon Sharpe can be, I'm good with that. That might not be better than Tim. That might not be better than John. But that was the best I could be. I got the best out of my God-given ability. And at the end of the day, I lay my head on the pillow at night and I said, well, Shannon, you did the best you could today. That was it.
2 more questions for you, and then we're going to get you out of here. I listened to your Hall of Fame speech, and you said that you neglected your children. As an African-American man with 4 kids myself, that really kind of, touched me a little bit. And a lot of times we struggle with being successful, but then also raising a family. So the question is, do you really feel like your kids felt like they were neglected?
They weren't neglected in the sense of having things, but the thing for me, success, I was driven by success. I was obsessed with being great. And then you have to make a decision. And the greater the goal, the greater the sacrifice. Because you see what happens is when people walk, when you list your goals on the left side, how many of you guys have ever listed goals, but on the right side listed what you're willing to sacrifice to get that? See, that's what I did. And I understood there were going to be times that I wasn't going to be able to make recitals. I wasn't going to be able to make practices. But I had to be able to live with that. And at the time, did my kids understand it? No, they absolutely not. Because when I had promised to take them to the amusement park, but after spending 5 hours of training, I was exhausted and I didn't do it. It wasn't until they got older and they became adults that they actually appreciated what their dad did. Because now, all of a sudden, you got a mortgage, you got a car note, and you got all those things that you got to take care of. Now you understand that a lot of times you have to make sacrifices. But I think the thing is, for me, is that if you look at guys, you look at LeBron James, Savannah is the rock. She holds it all together. She allows him to go be the best basketball player he can be, the best businessman he can be, and she says, I got the kids. That there are things that he can make, but a lot of times that he wasn't able to make, the recitals and the practices and the PTA, the conferences and things like that. So when I said I neglected, I didn't physically neglect, but there are things that I missed out on. That you have, and you've been a businessman, you're not making everything. And your wife, she understands.
You're right there.
She understands. But the thing is, I'm happy that their mothers, they never talk bad about me. And says, well, you knew he wasn't gonna come. It was this is the reason why you're able to go to this school. This is the reason why you're able to handle these things. And so I appreciate them and the role that they played in still making me seem like I was my kid's superhero.
All right, good. That's awesome. You got to have that supporting spouse. So I have one more question. Then we have a couple students that wanted to ask you a question.
Okay.
So I normally ask people, go back 30, 40 years when you was a kid, what advice would you give? I'm going to ask you a different question.
Okay.
Go back 1 year. NBA Finals is about to start. Word is out. Shannon's leaving. You had a tough decision to make. And it appears as it worked out pretty well, So how has that experience been versus how you thought it could be?
I'd be lying if I told you I thought I would be where I am right now at this point in time. Did I think it was possible? Yes, but I thought it was going to take me a lot longer than what it actually took me. It's tough. See, people like, well, Shannon, why did you get so emotional? Because if you knew what I put into that job, you would understand it.
Yeah.
You see, the greater the expectation, the greater the hurt when it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
And I poured so much into that. I gave up everything. I lost relationships because I couldn't go out to dinner. I couldn't go to vacations. I couldn't go to, because I have to watch all the sporting events because I got to be able to talk about them on television and talk about them